introduce to you the people that are at the table. Our intent is to have a panel and to have some conversation around. And I really asked these people to come and share. We didn't do a lot of formal presentation, but we just want to be very open. And the group here may have questions along the way for us. And Linda, please interject at any time. To my left, or to my right, your left, is Phyllis Wolfram. And Phyllis is the Director of Special Education, Executive Director of Special Services here in Ozark, with emphasis, of course, in special ed. This is her 30th year as a special educator, if I remember correctly. And that's kind of an important event. But she also is very much involved in our state and the national level with issues related to special education. Next to her is Brian Hubbard, and Brian is the Title I Director in Springfield, Missouri Public Schools, and this is the vintage site. When you mentioned Magnolia 12 years ago, Springfield Public Schools began the partnership and comprehensive literacy model alongside Magnolia, Arkansas, and has had reading recovery since in the mid-90s in Springfield. Next to me in red is Linda Fugate, and she is the reading recovery teacher leader here in Ozark. This is her second year in that role. Then to my left and your right is Karen Hood, and Karen is the Ozark North principal and has been involved in implementing and utilizing the ESO since she became the principal at Ozark North. Then next to her is Dr. Kathy Grover, and Kathy is the assistant superintendent in Clever, Missouri, and Clever is a new site to our PCL model. And then to my extreme left, your right, is Dr. Craig Carson, and he is our assistant superintendent here in Ozark. And this is Craig's second year in Ozark, but it's a long time commitment to literacy. And he is a self-declared learner and continues to learn every day about what we're doing with literacy, and which is really a good role model. I want to begin with us really having a conversation about what are those challenges and what are those events that make moving into the PCL model not always as easy, sometimes bumpy, but also what are those tools that we have as a systems model that will really enhance us and support us in our work. So to do that, we're going to start with Kathy, Dr. Kathy Grover, and she's just going to kind of share some of her perspective as Clever Schools has begun this journey.
Our school, for those of you who aren't in the Missouri area, we're a fairly small school. K through 12, we have around 1,160 students. And so we're a small school compared to those that are here today that have the PCL model in place. A few years ago, we began to notice that our reading data wasn't what we wanted it to be. So we started looking at some different structures and ways of teaching reading, some of the processes that we had, to see what we needed to do to shore that up. And with the development of technology, as Dr. Dorn mentioned earlier, and how that has progressed and our need to improve some of the programs that we've been using and really relied heavily on, we were not going to be able to sustain those anymore. They were technology related. Research was beginning to show that they weren't as effective. Our data was showing that they weren't as effective as we wanted them to be. So we were looking for a new way to go. So at the beginning of the year, school year this last year, we had sort of a cold turkey switch away from some of that type of programming and reading to learning to do literacy a little bit differently. And I'm sitting here looking at some people that I consider to be just awesome, Southwest Missouri people, educators who I've been able to associate with over the last few years that have a rich literacy background and have shared a lot and talked with us a lot at different meetings that I've been at. And so in our district, we decided we were going to investigate reading recovery. And last year, we started with our first 2 teachers being trained in reading recovery. At the end of the school year last year, well, and at the beginning of that school year also with our our transition in how we were going to be teaching literacy, we decided we needed some support for our teachers because their worlds were just upside down. And at that point, we didn't feel that we had the financial structure to have one of our own in training to be a literacy coach. So we hired an independent contractor to come in and work with us, and that worked for a little while, but by the middle of the year we knew we needed our own person. And so plans were made, and we were able to bring on a literacy coach this year. He has been working with Linda and Carla and UALR, and is just busy all the time and already bringing great practices to our teachers. Our reading recovery teachers, one of them has remained with us. The other one went on to be with another district, and so we are training a new reading recovery teacher again this year. But that's okay because we're just building as we go. So as I said and look, and there's finger pointing, that district is here that took our reading recovery teacher away. But as we're continuing to grow, we're looking forward to this next year and what movements we can make, what else we can do. Of course, as a new district, moving from the kind of system we had, we needed a lot of stuff. We needed a lot of books. We needed a lot of resources. We needed knowledge. We needed time for teachers to collaborate, to learn new processes. We need folks to go in and share, this is what this looks like. This is how a classroom's supposed to look. These are the tools you will need. And so our literacy coach is really busy with that, with her model classroom teachers. We've been going to a lot of professional development. As a matter of fact, just about any time something comes up that's an opportunity, we try to get as many people out to that professional development as possible. We were at UALR just a little over a week ago and went to some great sessions with some of the presenters sitting right here in this room with us. We will be attending the state conference coming up next week, some of our staff. Model classroom teachers, literacy coach, Title I teachers who we are hoping to, that's part of our process, we want to get them into the CIM training coming up this next year. We want to add some more staff to, we would really like to add another reading recovery teacher or possibly look at having a reading recovery teacher lead or trained next year. So we just have a lot to do. We have a long way to go. We know it takes baby steps. We want to implement with fidelity with what we're doing. But as I look around this room and see the great experience that we have and people that we can call on for advice in all of this, it's pretty exciting, but it's overwhelming. So I'm looking forward to listening and learning just like everybody else today.
Thank you, Kathy. And as we're hearing Kathy say, it truly is that link and that connection that we work together, that we need to support and lean on each other to really problem solve, because problem solving is not an isolated event. Problem solving is really an effort. Linda, we're needing some music. Yeah, we've please, our new stuff, please mute over in Daraway's side, please mute. Okay. We're learning our technology. Okay, thank you. That's one of the challenges with the technology. As we are making our moving from a site that's just beginning, that's really looking for supports, that's having to make a real financial investment in people and a financial investment in terms of the kinds of training. We then also want to ensure that are we doing what we need to be doing. And so I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Karen Hood. And Karen, as a principal at Ozark North, has worked alongside her instructional coach. And I'll just say, my other K-4 buildings have done this very intensely. Had what we call ESL walkthroughs. And I want to begin by telling the story. I can remember several years ago when the instructional coach and I walked through that building, a building of over, now it's 560 children. And we went into all the classrooms and we did our ESL together. When Karen came aboard as principal, she joined us in that endeavor. And just recently, when we did our K through 4 walkthroughs throughout our district, I have a great picture, but we had about 15 to 16 individuals doing the walkthroughs in a building, which included our superintendent, which included Dr. Carson, our assistant superintendent, which included our assistant elementary principals, our 4 elementary principals, and our coaches. And we truly turned it into a learning event. So I really see Karen Hood as a learner as being very important in that, and I want her just to take a moment to kind of share that work that they have been doing at Ozark.
Well, it's a pleasure to visit with all of you, and for those coaches out there, I just want to thank you for the work that you do, because you're on the front lines, and we really, really appreciate what you do for classroom teachers. And so it's been quite the journey, and I appreciate what you had to say starting out the journey. And as a pretty new principal, this is the start of my 4th year at Ozark North, I feel like I'm still learning a lot and still growing a lot, and rely on my instructional coach who's been there quite a while, and now we have 2 instructional coaches that we share among buildings to continue that learning process. And I believe that first year was such valuable time that I set aside just to spend quality learning and walking with her, going into classrooms, asking questions, and learning about the ESAL itself, and just sitting down with your coach and going through all 10 criteria.
Maybe can we mute it, please?
Brooke, no, she just muted it. Okay, I think we're all right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
As you spend some time just walking through the 10 criteria and having conversation, I think one of the most important things that I learned is identifying what the ESAL is asking you to look for. What are those look fors? What is that common language understanding? We're still having conversations around that. It is still a learning, growing process that we have often. What do these terms mean? What are we supposed to look for when we go into a classroom as evidence that shows that this particular criterion is being met? And I think one of the values as a building principal is it kind of gives you that 20-foot look at your building as far as literacy goes, to see, are we holding to the fidelity? How are we doing? What is going really well so that we can celebrate those things that are going very well in the building? And where do we need to focus our professional development in the future, not only as a building, but at the district level as we all work together to lift literacy in our district. And so then the third thing I would say would be, what resources do we need? So this tool that we have for partnership and comprehensive literacy is a very valuable tool. We do not use it as an evaluative tool for individual classroom teachers, however. This is a broad look at your building, an assessment to see how are we doing in the model, in literacy, how is instruction going, how are we looking at data, how are we looking at assessments. Are we implementing deeper levels of rigor through evidence, and someone mentioned it earlier, of those anchor charts that are demonstrated on the wall. So as we look through together, it allows us to have conversation and collaboration, and it deepens our own understanding and our own growth. So it's been a little bit of a journey. When I first got to Ozark North, as Dr. Scott said, it was just the instructional coach, myself, and Dr. Scott that walked through. And as we concentrated on the ESAL, we really looked at the first 4 criterion, specifically because we were in those classrooms, in those hallways, looking for evidence of literacy instruction. The rest of the ESAL criterion, we kind of worked as principal and coach. As you talk about your assessment wall, as you talk about professional development in the future, as you look at the actual coach, Dr. Scott and I would have conversations about, how the coach is doing. How can we support our coaches in lifting that learning in the classroom? But when we do an actual walkthrough, we really focus on those first 4 criteria. And so our instructional coach, and I believe you guys have the opportunity to have copies of this. It's on Dropbox, and I believe we have some over here that you can pick up. You can kind of see some examples of how we've used this. The first really important thing I would say to prepare your teachers for a walkthrough is to let them know what it is you're going to be coming in and looking at. Because whenever you walk into someone's classroom, in order to kind of take an assessment look in a room, they need to know what you're looking for. That's only fair. And so one of the things that our coach did was to kind of break down the language for the teachers in the first 4 criteria, and she kind of walked them through, this is the evidence we're looking for. It was also great professional development through team meetings because the teachers had the opportunity to ask questions, and conversations came up about, you know, definitions of terms or instructional strategies that were tied to the model. So you can, if you can have a copy of it, you can kind of see her notes to the teachers about this is what this particular point in this particular criteria means. So as you read through there, you can kind of see some of the terms that she defined for them, some of the pieces of evidence that they would look for. So as she had those conversations with classroom teachers, I also had conversations with the instructional coach as well, so that together when we walk through, and with Dr. Scott, we are on the same page as far as what we're looking for as evidence. And as this e-sale has grown and been tweaked even this year, you can see kind of an adapted form that we have used with highlights on it. And those highlights were actually conversation starters that we had as a group before we walked through the building. Just making sure that we were understanding some of those terms like inquiry-based learning. Well, what is inquiry-based learning and literacy, and what kinds of evidence are we looking for in inquiry-based learning as we go through and do our evaluation or our walkthrough? So we highlighted a few that we discussed as a team, and those are also highlighted areas that the coach discussed with the class teachers. And that's future team meeting professional development for them as they get stronger and stronger in their instructional practices in the classroom. So those are some tools that you can use. You'll also see that we wanted a walkthrough form that was quick and easy. We did the e-sale walkthrough in 2 hours. We had quite a large team. It's more from 3 people walking through our buildings to now a whole team of people, not only walking one elementary school, but all 4 elementary schools. So our collaboration, we've had opportunities to have conversations among all our elementary schools to make sure that we're understanding the same types of definitions and terms as we walk through, and also celebrate what we're seeing in each other's buildings. The great thing that's happened from that is that we now have great models that we know about among our shared buildings that we can send classroom teachers to, or teams of teachers as they meet during their professional learning community time, and talk about some of the things that they saw instructionally. So it's kind of been a blessing. It's kind of filtered down through. So the way we designed the form was you had the criterion on the left-hand side, and then you had the rooms that you were going to on the right, so that you had, you know, when you were walking through a kindergarten classroom, you were assigned a room to go in, and you could take quick notes. We have a little key down at the bottom for short and sweet little marking, so that you're only in that classroom for about 5 or 6 minutes to do the quick. The other thing, since we've grown so much in our walking through together and observing, we limited it to criterion 1 and 2. And the reason we did was because 3 and 4, you really need to know your building well and not be kind of an outsider coming in, to know where teachers keep those key pieces of assessment and data that you will see in criteria 3 and 4. So those anecdotal notes, where they keep their running records, where their guided reading lesson plans are located, could be different in each room. And instead of spending so much time trying to filter through teachers' things to find it, which makes them very nervous, by the way, We just took those two criteria out, and that would be something that the instructional coach who's familiar with the building and the building principal could go through together at a later time and assess those particular criteria. So we focused on 1 and 2, which is a broad look at what was going on in the classrooms and on the walls. And then we had great conversation afterwards. And the conversation afterwards was really focused on where are our strengths, where can we celebrate, and where do we need to hone in to help support teachers in professional development, not only in our own individual buildings, but also as a district.
Thank you, Karen. I think one of the things that we keep consistent is that ESAIL model, the tool, is really built on common language, us having a common experience, having common expectations, and then really having that common planning. And we are not a deficit model. The whole concept or the idea is we're a strength-based model. And it's looking at where we are and then where we need to go next with our growth. One of the foundations.
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.